The insurance paperwork scattered across the kitchen counter as Naomi searched through the manila folder. She needed Brandon's medical information for their new joint health plan, but what she found instead made her stomach drop to the floor. Patient, Brandon Mitchell. Diagnosis, chlamydia. Treatment date, August 15th. Follow-up required in 30 days. August 15th. 3 weeks after their honeymoon in Barbados. 3 weeks after the last time her husband had touched her with any real passion. 3 weeks before he started making excuses about needing space, not being ready for the next level of intimacy, wanting to take things slow in their marriage. Naomi's hands shook as she held the lab results. Her beautiful brown skin felt cold despite the afternoon sun streaming through their apartment windows. The diamond on her finger suddenly felt heavy, like a chain rather than a symbol of love. "Honey, I'm home." Brandon's voice echoed from the front door. She quickly shoved the papers back into the folder, her mind racing. All those nights when she'd worn the lingerie he used to love, only to have him roll over with another tired excuse. All those mornings when she tried to initiate something, anything, and he'd suddenly remembered an early meeting or important call. "Hey babe." Brandon appeared in the kitchen, still in his navy business suit. He was handsome in that clean-cut way that had first attracted her tall, athletic build, smooth dark skin, and that smile that used to make her heart skip. Now it just made her feel sick. He moved to kiss her cheek, the same distant peck he'd been giving her for weeks. Naomi forced herself not to pull away, though every nerve in her body screamed in protest. "How was work?" she asked, her voice somehow steady despite the chaos in her head. "Same old stuff. Johnson's still being difficult about the Patterson account." Brandon loosened his tie, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife had just discovered his deepest secret. "What's all this?" He nodded toward the scattered papers. "Insurance stuff. I was looking for your medical information for the new plan." She watched his face carefully. There was just a flicker of panic in his eyes before he recovered. "Did you find what you needed?" "I think so." Naomi gathered the papers slowly, deliberately. "Though I'm missing some recent records." "Have you been to the doctor lately?" Brandon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "No, nothing recent. You know I hate going to doctors." The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. How many other lies had she missed? How many times had he looked her in the eye and deceived her without batting an eyelash? "Well, let me know if you remember any visits. The insurance company needs everything from the last 6 months." "Sure thing." Brandon grabbed a beer from the fridge. "I'm going to shower and change. Long day." As his footsteps disappeared down the hallway, Naomi pulled the medical record back out. She read it again, hoping somehow the words had changed, that she'd misunderstood. But there it was, clear as day. Her husband had contracted a sexually transmitted infection 3 weeks after their honeymoon. 3 weeks into their marriage. And instead of telling her, instead of explaining why he'd suddenly become distant and cold, he'd lied. Every single day for over a month, he'd looked at her confused, hurt face and lied. The worst part wasn't even the cheating, though that felt like a knife through her heart. The worst part was that he'd let her blame herself. Night after night, she'd wondered what was wrong with her, why her new husband didn't want her anymore. She'd bought new perfume, new clothes, tried to be more attractive, more interesting, more whatever she thought he needed. All while he knew exactly why he was avoiding her. All while he protected his secret at the cost of her self-esteem. Naomi set the paper down and walked to the bathroom mirror. Looking back at her was a beautiful 28-year-old woman with rich brown skin, natural hair styled in elegant twists, and dark eyes that usually sparkled with life. Now those eyes looked hollow, betrayed. She'd given up her own apartment for this marriage. Changed her name. Rearranged her entire life around building a future with Brandon. She trusted him completely, believed in them completely. What a fool she'd been. The shower was still running. Naomi could hear Brandon humming, actually humming, like he didn't have a care in the world. Like he wasn't slowly destroying his wife's sanity with his deception. She walked back to the kitchen and pulled out her phone. Her finger hovered over her best friend Cassandra's number. She could call, cry, get comfort and advice. But something stopped her. Instead, she opened a new note on her phone and typed, "Questions to research. Who gave him the infection? How long has the affair been going on? What else has he lied about? How can I prove everything?" Naomi stared at the list. A month ago, she would have confronted Brandon immediately, demanded answers, fought for their marriage. But that was before she knew what kind of man she'd really married. That was before she realized he was capable of watching her suffer and doing nothing to help. Now she wanted something else entirely. She wanted the truth. All of it. And then she wanted revenge. 3 days of careful investigation revealed more than Naomi had bargained for. She waited until Brandon left for his business trip to Detroit before diving deep into their shared accounts and his personal belongings. The credit card statements painted a clear picture. Multiple charges at the Meridian Hotel downtown, always on weekdays, always during lunch hours. Expensive dinners for two at restaurants she'd never been to. Charges at Victoria's Secret that hadn't resulted in gifts for her. But it was Brandon's laptop that provided the smoking gun. Naomi had suspected he'd changed his password, but Brandon was predictable. After 3 tries, their anniversary, her birthday, his birthday, she got in with their old shared password. Their wedding date. The irony wasn't lost on her. His email was a goldmine of evidence. Months of messages to and from Rebecca Foster, his colleague from the marketing department. The early emails were professional, discussing campaigns and client meetings. But they gradually became more personal, more intimate. Can't wait to see you at lunch tomorrow. Wear that blue dress. Brandon, July 10th. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Rebecca, July 18th. My wife is getting suspicious about the late nights. We need to be more careful. Brandon, August 2nd. August 2nd. 2 weeks after their wedding. Naomi's hands clenched into fists as she scrolled through message after message. Photos Rebecca had sent, nothing explicit, but intimate enough. Plans for secret meetings. Complaints about having to pretend they were just co-workers. The timeline was devastating. The affair had started 3 months before Naomi and Brandon's wedding. He'd been cheating during their engagement, during the wedding planning, probably even on their wedding day. She took screenshots of everything, methodically building her evidence file. Then she moved to social media, studying Rebecca Foster's profiles. Rebecca was attractive in a conventional way, blonde, petite, the kind of woman who posted gym selfies and inspirational quotes about living your best life. Her Instagram showed a lifestyle funded by someone making more money than a marketing coordinator should have. Designer bags, expensive restaurants, weekend trips to places she claimed were work conferences. The most recent photos showed Rebecca with a different man, tall, red-haired, clearly smitten. The caption from 2 weeks ago made Naomi's blood run cold. He finally proposed. Planning the wedding of my dreams. Hashtag engaged, hashtag so happy, hashtag blessed beyond measure. Rebecca was engaged. To someone else. While still sleeping with Brandon. Naomi stared at the photo of Rebecca showing off a massive diamond ring, beaming next to her unsuspecting fiancé. This woman wasn't just a homewrecker, she was playing multiple people, destroying multiple lives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. Missing you already. Detroit is boring without my beautiful wife. Love you. The casual way he lied even now made Naomi feel nauseous. She set the phone aside without responding and continued her research. Rebecca's fiancé was named Thomas Chin, and a quick LinkedIn search revealed he was a successful software engineer at a major tech company. His social media painted the picture of a decent guy, photos with his family, volunteer work, posts about hiking and cooking. He had no idea his future wife was living a double life. Neither did Brandon's boss, Mr. Patterson, who clearly valued Brandon's work and had recently promoted him. The company had strict policies about workplace relationships, especially between different departments. If he knew about Brandon and Rebecca, both of them would face serious consequences. As Naomi dug deeper, she found more evidence of Brandon's deception. Secret credit cards she'd never known about. A post office box she'd never heard of. Hotel loyalty program points earned during times when he'd supposedly been at client meetings or work events. Her husband wasn't just unfaithful, he was a master manipulator who'd been living a completely separate life. The front door clicked open, making Naomi jump. She quickly closed all the browser windows and shut the laptop. Honey, I'm back early. Brandon called out. The Detroit meeting got canceled, so I caught the first flight home. Surprise. Naomi arranged her face into a smile and walked to greet him. Welcome home. How was the trip? Short and sweet. I missed sleeping next to you. He pulled her into a hug that felt like a performance. I missed you too, she lied smoothly, surprised by how easily the deception came to her now that she knew what kind of game they were playing. Brandon pulled back and studied her face. You look different. Good, different. Relaxed. If only he knew. For the first time in weeks, Naomi felt like she had control over something. She wasn't confused anymore, wasn't questioning herself or wondering what she'd done wrong. She knew exactly what was happening, and more importantly, she knew what she was going to do about it. I had some time to think while you were gone, she said. I feel like I have more clarity about things. That's great, babe. I've been thinking too. Maybe we should plan a little getaway, just the two of us. Reconnect, you know? The suggestion was probably meant to sound romantic, but Naomi heard it for what it really was: guilt and panic. Maybe Rebecca was pressuring him, or maybe he'd realized how distant he'd become and was trying to cover his tracks. That sounds wonderful, Naomi replied. But let's wait until things settle down at work for both of us. I want to be able to focus completely on us. Brandon nodded, relief visible on his face. He thought he'd bought himself more time, more opportunities to figure out how to juggle his double life. He had no idea that time was the last thing he had left. That night, as Brandon slept peacefully beside her, Naomi lay awake planning her next moves. She had the evidence she needed, but she wanted more than just proof of the affair. She wanted justice, not just for herself but for Thomas and for anyone else Brandon and Rebecca might hurt in the future. She wanted to expose them both in a way that would have real consequences, not just emotional ones. She wanted them to face the same kind of devastation they'd inflicted on the people who trusted them. Most of all, she wanted them to understand that actions have consequences, and that some betrayals can't be forgiven or forgotten. As the clock hit 3 a.m., Naomi finally had a plan. It would take patience and perfect timing, but it would be worth it. Brandon and Rebecca were about to learn a very expensive lesson about playing games with people's hearts. Naomi waited exactly 1 week before making her move. She spent those days acting like the loving, trusting wife Brandon expected, all while gathering the final pieces of evidence she needed. The confrontation happened on a Saturday morning, when Brandon was relaxed and off guard. He just finished his morning jog and was stretching in their living room when Naomi walked in carrying a manila folder. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm but firm. Something in her tone made Brandon freeze mid-stretch. "What's wrong?" "Sit down, Brandon." He remained standing, defensive now. "Naomi, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I said sit down." The steel in her voice surprised them both. Brandon slowly lowered himself onto the couch, his athletic frame suddenly looking small and vulnerable. Naomi remained standing, the folder clutched in her hands. "I found your medical records," she said without preamble. The color drained from Brandon's face. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to speak, but no words came out. "Chlamydia, Brandon. Treated on August 15th. 3 weeks after our honeymoon." Naomi's voice remained steady, though her heart was pounding. "Want to explain that to me?" Naomi, I can explain. I'm not finished." She opened the folder and pulled out printed emails. "I also found these. Months of messages between you and Rebecca Foster. Your coworker. Your affair partner." Brandon's head dropped into his hands. "Oh God. Oh God is right." Naomi threw the emails onto the coffee table. "Did you know she's engaged, Brandon? To a nice guy named Thomas who has no idea his fiancée has been sleeping with a married man." "Naomi, please." "Please what? Please keep pretending I don't know my husband has been cheating on me since before our wedding? Please keep letting me think there's something wrong with me because you suddenly don't want to touch me anymore?" Brandon looked up, tears in his eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And then you lied about it. Every single day for over a month, you looked me in the eye and lied. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. So you decided to let me blame myself instead?" Naomi's composure finally cracked, anger flooding her voice. "Do you have any idea what these past weeks have been like for me? Wondering what I did wrong, why my new husband suddenly found me repulsive." "I don't find you repulsive. I love you." "Don't." Naomi held up her hand. "Don't you dare say you love me. You don't lie to people you love. You don't expose them to diseases without their knowledge. You don't make them question their own sanity to protect your secrets." Brandon stood up, reaching for her. "Naomi, I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes." "When did it start?" "What?" "The affair with Rebecca. When did it start?" Brandon's silence was answer enough. "Before our wedding," Naomi stated. It wasn't a question. 3 months before, he whispered. 3 months. Naomi laughed bitterly. "So while I was picking out flowers and tasting cakes and dreaming about our future, you were sleeping with someone else. I tried to end it before the wedding. I swear I tried. But it was complicated." "Complicated." Naomi repeated the word like it tasted bad. "That's what you call it when you promise to love and honor someone while you're betraying them with their coworker? I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every day for a month you hurt me. You watched me suffer and you said nothing." Brandon was crying now, desperate. "Tell me how to fix this. Please, Naomi. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job, we can move away, start fresh. There is no fixing this. There has to be. I love you. I know I screwed up, but I love you more than anything. If you loved me, you wouldn't have cheated on me. It didn't mean anything with Rebecca. She doesn't mean anything to me. Then why are you still seeing her? Brandon froze. What? Naomi pulled out more printed evidence. Hotel charges from this week, Brandon. While you were supposedly in Detroit on business. Except these charges are from the Meridian downtown. The same hotel where you've been meeting Rebecca for months. I can explain. You were never in Detroit, were you? Brandon's shoulders sagged in defeat. No. So even after giving you an STD, even after all the guilt and fear you've been living with, you still chose her over me. You're still choosing her. It's not like that. What's it like then? Help me understand how my husband can look me in the eye and lie about a business trip so he can spend 2 days in a hotel with his mistress. She said she was going to tell Thomas about us. I was trying to convince her not to. By sleeping with her? I was trying to fix things. For who, Brandon? For me? Or for yourself? Brandon had no answer for that. Naomi walked to the window, looking out at the city they'd planned to build their life in together. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago, but nothing would ever be the same again. I've already contacted a lawyer, she said quietly. Naomi, no. Please don't do this. We can work it out. I'll go to therapy, I'll do whatever you want. I want my life back. The life I had before I married a liar. I'm not a liar. You've literally been lying to me every day for over a month. That's different. How? Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no defense because there was no defense. I'm filing for divorce, Naomi continued. And I'm going to make sure Thomas knows what kind of woman he's about to marry. He deserves the truth just like I did. Naomi, please. You'll ruin everything. Rebecca could lose her job, her engagement. Should have thought about that before you decided to destroy our marriage. But I love you. Naomi turned back to face him, and Brandon was shocked by the coldness in her eyes. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a wife who trusts you completely and doesn't ask questions. You love having someone to come home to while you play games with other people's hearts. That's not true. Then prove it. Tell me you're going to Rebecca's engagement party next weekend to confess everything to Thomas yourself. Brandon's face went white. You know about the party? I know about a lot of things, Brandon. So what's it going to be? Are you going to do the right thing for once? The silence stretched between them until Naomi had her answer. That's what I thought. She picked up her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? Away from you. I'll be back Monday to pack my things. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay. Naomi, wait. But she was already gone, leaving Brandon alone with the wreckage of the life he'd destroyed with his own choices. As she walked to her car, Naomi felt lighter than she had in weeks. The uncertainty was over. The self-doubt was over. Now she could focus on what came next. And what came next was making sure Brandon and Rebecca faced the consequences of their actions. Naomi spent the weekend at a downtown hotel, using the time to plan her next moves with the precision of a military operation. She'd taken screenshots of everything, backed up files, and even made copies of physical evidence. If Brandon thought he could make any of his digital trail disappear, he was wrong. But divorce papers and evidence weren't enough. Naomi wanted something more satisfying than just legal victory. She wanted Brandon and Rebecca to experience the same humiliation and betrayal they'd inflicted on others. That's when she remembered the company picnic. Patterson Holdings' annual summer picnic was legendary, the one event where all employees' families were invited, where the CEO made his big announcements, where careers were made and sometimes broken based on who networked well and who didn't. Brandon had been talking about it for months, seeing it as his chance to cement his recent promotion and make his mark with the senior partners. The picnic was this Saturday. Rebecca would be there with Thomas, probably showing off her engagement ring and playing the role of the happy future bride. Brandon would be there, schmoozing and pretending to be the devoted husband while his wife was conveniently out of town visiting family, the excuse he'd already crafted without consulting her. It was perfect. Monday morning, Naomi drove to her friend Cassandra's house instead of going home. Cassandra took one look at her and immediately put on coffee. Okay, what did Brandon do? Cassandra had never liked Brandon, always saying there was something too smooth about him, too rehearsed. Naomi laid out everything, the medical records, the emails, the fake business trip, all of it. Cassandra's expression grew darker with each revelation. That son of a bitch, Cassandra finally said. Naomi, I am so sorry. But I'm also proud of you for not taking him back. I'm not done yet. Naomi pulled out her laptop and showed Cassandra the plan she'd been developing. "I need your help." Cassandra grinned as she read. "Oh, this is evil. I love it." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Cassandra would attend the company picnic as Naomi's representative, armed with printed evidence and a carefully scripted story. She'd approach Thomas privately, expressing concern as someone who'd accidentally discovered information he needed to know about his fiancée. Meanwhile, Naomi would handle Brandon's boss, Mr. Patterson, through a well-timed email that would arrive during the picnic, when Patterson was surrounded by colleagues and clients. The email would contain evidence of Brandon and Rebecca's inappropriate workplace relationship, along with documentation of how their personal drama was affecting company resources and reputation. "What about the timing?" Cassandra asked. "Rebecca's engagement announcement in the company newsletter goes out this Wednesday. Patterson will be in a great mood about one of his employees finding love. The picnic is Saturday when everyone's relaxed and social. That's when the bomb drops. And you're sure you want to do this? There's no going back once we pull the trigger." Naomi thought about the past month of self-doubt and confusion. She thought about Brandon humming in the shower while she questioned her own worth. She thought about Rebecca posting inspirational quotes about honesty and integrity while living a lie. "I'm sure." Tuesday morning, Naomi went to the apartment to pack while Brandon was at work. She took only what was hers, leaving the expensive wedding gifts and shared purchases behind. She'd built a life before Brandon and she could build another one after him. She was almost finished when her phone rang. "Brandon. Naomi, please come home. We need to talk about this rationally." "There's nothing to talk about. I ended it with Rebecca. Sover, I swear. I choose you. I choose our marriage." "Too late." "It's never too late if we both want to make it work." "But we don't both want to make it work. I want out." "You don't mean that." "Brandon, I've never meant anything more in my life." "What about the picnic this weekend? Everyone's expecting to see you there." Naomi almost laughed. Even now, he was worried about appearances, about what people would think. "Tell them I'm sick." "Naomi." "Goodbye, Brandon." She hung up and turned off the phone. She had work to do. Wednesday brought the company newsletter with Rebecca's engagement announcement, complete with a photo of her and Thomas looking blissfully happy. The announcement praised Rebecca as one of our most dedicated team members, and wished her all the happiness in the world. Naomi felt a twinge of guilt about Thomas. He seemed like a genuinely good person who didn't deserve this. But he deserved the truth, and he deserved it before he made the mistake of marrying someone who could betray him so easily. Thursday, Naomi met with her lawyer to finalize the divorce papers. The attorney, Mrs. Rodriguez, was impressed with the evidence Naomi had gathered. "This is very thorough. Your husband won't be able to contest much of anything with documentation like this." "Good. I want this to be as clean and quick as possible." "What about alimony?" "You could probably get." "I don't want his money. I just want out." Mrs. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "I like clients who know what they want." Friday night, Naomi and Cassandra did a final run-through of their plan. Cassandra would arrive at the picnic early, locate Thomas, and have a private conversation away from the crowds. She'd present the evidence gently but clearly, letting Thomas draw his own conclusions about what he needed to do. "What if he doesn't believe me?" Cassandra asked. "Then that's his choice. But at least he'll have the information he needs to make an informed decision about his future." "And what if Rebecca tries to deny everything?" "She can try. But the evidence speaks for itself." Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a company picnic and a reckoning. Naomi felt nervous but determined. After today there would be no more secrets, no more lies, no more wondering what was real and what wasn't. As Cassandra left for the picnic, Naomi sat down at her laptop to compose the email that would destroy Brandon's career. She'd crafted it carefully over the past few days, making sure every word was professional, factual, and devastating. Subject: Urgent HR matter, inappropriate workplace conduct. Mr. Patterson, I am writing to bring to your attention a serious workplace conduct issue involving employees Brandon Mitchell and Rebecca Foster. I have documentation of an inappropriate personal relationship that has been ongoing for several months, including during work hours and using company resources. Attached you will find evidence of this relationship, including email communications using company accounts, charges for personal meetings during claimed business hours, and other documentation that demonstrates a clear violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships and professional conduct. I believe this matter requires immediate attention, particularly given Ms. Foster's recent engagement announcement and the potential impact on company reputation and employee morale. The documentation is comprehensive and verifiable. I am happy to discuss this matter further at your convenience. Sincerely, a concerned employee. Naomi scheduled the email to send at 2 p.m. right when the picnic would be at its peak, when Patterson would be surrounded by colleagues and clients, when the chaos would be immediate and public. Then she sat back and waited for justice to be served. At exactly 1:47 p.m., Cassandra spotted Thomas near the barbecue station, laughing at something one of Brandon's colleagues had said. He was exactly as his photos suggested, tall, pleasant-looking, with kind eyes and an easy smile. Rebecca was nowhere to be seen, probably off networking or showing off her ring to other employees' wives. Cassandra approached carefully, waiting for a natural break in the conversation. "Excuse me, are you Thomas Chin?" "Yes, that's me." Thomas smiled politely. "I don't think we've met. I'm Cassandra Williams. I was hoping I could speak with you privately for a moment. It's about Rebecca." Thomas's expression shifted to concern. "Is everything all right? Did something happen? Could we step over here?" Cassandra gestured toward a quieter area near the edge of the park, away from the crowds. As they walked, Thomas grew more worried. "You're scaring me. Is Rebecca hurt?" "She's not hurt, but there's something you need to know about her. Something I discovered by accident, and I felt you deserved to hear it before." Cassandra gestured toward his ring finger. Thomas stopped walking. "Before what?" "Before you marry her." The color drained from Thomas's face. "What are you talking about?" Cassandra pulled out a manila envelope. "Thomas, I'm going to show you some things. I want you to know I'm not doing this to be cruel or to cause drama. I'm doing this because I believe you have the right to make informed decisions about your future." "What kind of things?" Instead of answering, Cassandra opened the envelope and handed him the first printed email. "These are communications between Rebecca and Brandon Mitchell, her married colleague. They're dated from the past several months." Thomas took the paper with trembling hands and began to read. Cassandra watched as his face went through a range of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, devastating understanding. "This can't be real," he whispered. "There are more." Cassandra handed him additional emails, watching as each one landed like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry, Thomas." Thomas sank onto a nearby bench, staring at the evidence of his fiancée's betrayal. "How long has this been going on?" "According to what I found, at least 6 months. Possibly longer." 6 months. Thomas's voice was hollow. "She's been planning our wedding for 6 months. We've been talking about starting a family, buying a house. I know this is devastating. Where did you get these?" Thomas looked up suddenly, his eyes sharp despite his shock. "Who are you?" Cassandra had prepared for this question. "I'm Brandon Mitchell's wife's best friend. His wife discovered the affair and asked me to make sure you knew the truth before the wedding." "His wife knows." "She found out a few days ago. She's filing for divorce." Thomas stared at the emails again. "I can't believe this is happening. Rebecca seems so... We were planning to have kids. She talks about honesty and trust all the time." "I'm so sorry." "No, don't apologize. You're the only one who's been honest with me." Thomas stood up, his jaw set with new determination. "Where is she?" Across the park, Brandon was deep in conversation with Mr. Patterson and several major clients, playing the role of the dedicated employee and loving husband. He'd already spun the story of Naomi's absence. She was visiting her sick mother, couldn't bear to miss such an important family commitment. "Your wife sounds like a wonderful woman," Mr. Patterson was saying. "We'll have to have you both over for dinner soon." "She'd love that," Brandon replied smoothly, checking his watch. 2:03 p.m. Everything was going perfectly. Then his phone buzzed with a company email alert. Mr. Patterson's phone buzzed at the same time. And so did every other phone belonging to Patterson Holdings employees at the picnic. Brandon felt a chill of dread as he opened the email. When he saw the subject line "Urgent HR Matter, Inappropriate Workplace Conduct," his world tilted sideways. What the hell is this? Mr. Patterson's voice had gone cold as he read. Brandon's hands shook as he scrolled through the attached evidence: his own emails, hotel receipts, meeting schedules. Everything laid out in devastating detail. "Mr. Patterson, I can explain." "You can explain how you've been having an affair with Rebecca Foster using company resources? You can explain how you've been lying about business meetings to have hotel rendezvous." Other employees were starting to notice the commotion. Phone screens were lighting up throughout the picnic as people opened the email and began to read. "Sir, it's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been violating every ethics policy we have while I've been praising your dedication and professionalism. Brandon's throat closed as he realized the scope of the disaster. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore, this was his career, his reputation, everything he'd worked for. Who sent this email? Mr. Patterson demanded. Before Brandon could answer, a commotion erupted near the barbecue station. Rebecca was screaming at Thomas, who was holding printed papers and shaking his head. You're crazy. I would never do something like that. Rebecca's voice carried across the park. Where did you get those lies? They're not lies, Rebecca. Thomas's voice was louder now, drawing attention from everyone nearby. These are your emails. Your words. Brandon watched in horror as his two worlds collided in the most public way possible. Rebecca spotted him across the crowd and their eyes met. In that moment they both realized they'd been completely and utterly exposed. Oh my God, Mr. Patterson breathed, following Brandon's gaze. Foster is the other party involved in this. The crowd around Thomas and Rebecca was growing larger. Several of Rebecca's colleagues from marketing had moved closer, clearly recognizing names and situations from the evidence Thomas was holding. This is a disaster, one of the senior partners muttered to Patterson. The whole company is here. Clients, families, everyone. Brandon felt like he was watching his life implode in slow motion. Rebecca was still denying everything, but Thomas was holding up papers, reading excerpts aloud for everyone to hear. Her colleagues were starting to back away, understanding dawning on their faces. Mitchell, Patterson's voice cut through Brandon's panic. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises on Monday to collect your personal belongings. Mr. Patterson, please. And Foster too. This kind of conduct is unacceptable, and doing it so publicly shows a complete lack of judgment and respect for this company. Brandon looked around desperately, but every face he saw reflected the same thing: disgust, disappointment, and loss of respect. His colleagues, people he'd worked with for years, were looking at him like he was a stranger. Near the barbecue station, Rebecca had gone from denial to anger, screaming at Thomas about invasion of privacy and how he had no right to humiliate her publicly. But Thomas wasn't backing down. I have every right. Thomas shouted back. You were going to marry me while sleeping with someone else. You made me look like a fool. It didn't mean anything. Then why did you do it? Rebecca had no answer for that, just like Brandon had had no answer when Naomi asked him the same question. As the crowd continued to grow and the situation spiraled further out of control, Brandon realized that this was it. This was his complete and utter destruction, orchestrated by the wife he'd betrayed and delivered with surgical precision. Naomi had gotten her revenge, and it was more thorough than anything he could have imagined. By Monday morning, the Patterson Holdings picnic disaster had become the stuff of company legend. Videos of Rebecca screaming at Thomas had been shared in group chats. Photos of Brandon being confronted by Mr. Patterson were circulating on social media. The story had even made it to a local gossip blog. Cheating scandal rocks local marketing firm. Naomi watched it all unfold from the coffee shop across from Patterson Holdings, nursing a latte and feeling surprisingly calm. She'd expected to feel triumphant, but instead she just felt finished. Like a chapter of her life had finally closed. Her phone rang. Brandon. Naomi, please. We need to talk. I don't think we do. You destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, Rebecca's life. I didn't destroy anything, Brandon. You did that all by yourself. How could you be so cruel? I know I hurt you, but this is beyond revenge. This is vindictive. Naomi almost laughed. Vindictive? You mean like watching your wife blame herself for your sudden coldness and not telling her it's because you gave yourself an STD cheating on her? That's different. How? Brandon had no answer, just like he'd had no answers for anything else. I'm filing a restraining order if you don't stop calling me, Naomi said calmly. Goodbye, Brandon. She hung up and blocked his number. Then she called Mrs. Rodriguez to check on the divorce proceedings. Everything's moving smoothly, the lawyer reported. Mr. Mitchell's attorney isn't putting up much of a fight, probably because the evidence is so overwhelming. We should have this finalized within a few months. Good. What about the assets? Since there's clear evidence of adultery and deception, and he used marital funds for his affair, you're entitled to more than half of everything. Are you sure you don't want alimony? Positive. I just want out. That afternoon, Naomi drove to her bank to open new accounts in her maiden name. As she sat in the banker's office, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Thomas Chin. Cassandra gave me your number. Could we meet? I'd like to thank you for telling me the truth. Naomi stared at the message for a long moment before responding, of course. Coffee tomorrow? They met at a quiet cafe downtown. Thomas looked like he'd aged 10 years since the picnic, but there was something lighter about him too, like a weight had been lifted. How are you holding up? Naomi asked. Better than I expected, actually. It hurts, but at least I know the truth now. I can't imagine what it would have been like to find out after we were married. I'm sorry you had to learn about it so publicly. Thomas shook his head. Don't apologize. If you hadn't told me, no one would have. I would have married her not knowing who she really was. What happened after the picnic? Rebecca tried to blame everyone but herself. Said you were jealous, that I was overreacting, that the evidence was fake. When that didn't work, she tried to claim she was going to end things with Brandon before the wedding. Did you believe her? For about 30 seconds. Then I realized that even if that were true, she still lied to me for months. She still planned our wedding while sleeping with someone else. She still let me meet her family and make plans for our future while living a completely different life. Naomi nodded. She understood that betrayal intimately. I called off the wedding yesterday, Thomas continued. Lost the deposits on everything, but it's worth it to know I'm not making the biggest mistake of my life. What about Rebecca? She's gone. Moved back to her parents' house in another state. Lost her job, obviously. I heard through the grapevine that she's blaming everyone but herself, saying she's the victim in all this. And Brandon? Haven't heard much about him. Word is he's having a hard time finding new employment. Turns out having an affair with a coworker and getting fired for it doesn't look great on a resume. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed by the same deception. Can I ask you something? Thomas said finally. Sure. Do you regret exposing them the way you did? I mean, it was pretty nuclear. Naomi considered the question seriously. No, I don't. They made their choices knowing other people would get hurt. They just didn't think about consequences because they assumed they'd never get caught. But now their lives are ruined. Their lives aren't ruined. Their lives are ruined. There's a difference. Thomas smiled for the first time since sitting down. I like that perspective. They can rebuild just like we can. The difference is they'll have to do it honestly now. Speaking of rebuilding, Thomas said, what's next for you? I'm not sure yet. I have some ideas though. The truth was, Naomi had been thinking a lot about her future. The graphic design company she worked for was fine, but she'd always dreamed of starting her own consulting firm. With the divorce settlement, she'd have enough capital to make that dream a reality. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I might be in the market for some consulting work. My company is always looking for fresh perspectives on design and marketing. As they parted ways, Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the future. For the first time since discovering Brandon's betrayal, she was thinking about what she wanted to build rather than what she wanted to tear down. That evening, she called Cassandra to update her on the meeting with Thomas. He seems like a good guy, Cassandra said. Much better than Brandon ever was. It's funny, Rebecca actually had a chance at a real relationship with someone who genuinely cared about her, and she threw it away for cheap thrills with a married man. Some people don't know a good thing when they have it. Naomi thought about that as she hung up. She'd thought she had a good thing with Brandon, but she'd been wrong. The good thing wasn't the marriage, it was discovering her own strength, her own worth, her own ability to demand better. As she fell asleep that night in her temporary apartment, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The storm was over. The truth was out. The people who'd betrayed her had faced consequences for their actions. Now she could focus on rebuilding her life on her own terms, with her own values, surrounded by people who actually deserved her trust and love. The revenge had been satisfying, but moving forward was going to be even better. 6 months later, Naomi stood in her new office space, watching contractors hang the sign that read Sterling Consultancy on the frosted glass door. The name felt right, strong, professional, and completely hers. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Brandon had tried one last desperate attempt to reconcile, showing up at her temporary apartment with flowers and promises of therapy. Naomi had calmly told him she'd already moved on, both literally and figuratively, and asked him not to contact her again. It looks amazing, Cassandra said, joining her in admiring the office. I can't believe how quickly you pulled this together. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not wasting energy on a lying husband, Naomi replied with a smile. The past few months had been a whirlwind of positive change. Using her share of the divorce settlement and her savings, Naomi had launched Sterling Consultancy, specializing in brand design and digital marketing for small businesses. Thomas had been her first client, and his recommendation had led to several others. Her second client had been a local restaurant owned by a young couple who reminded her of who she and Brandon could have been if he'd been capable of honesty. Her third was a nonprofit run by women who'd overcome domestic violence, a project that felt particularly meaningful given her own experience of emotional betrayal. "How's the client load looking?" Cassandra asked, settling into one of the new chairs Naomi had picked out. "Better than I expected. I'm actually going to need to hire help soon." It was true. Word was spreading quickly about Sterling Consultancy's fresh approach and attention to detail. Naomi found that her experience with betrayal and deception had actually made her better at helping clients identify authentic brand voices and avoid marketing that felt false or manipulative. "Speaking of help," Cassandra said with a grin, "Thomas mentioned he might know someone interested in contract work. Thomas and I talk about business sometimes. That's all. And the fact that he's attractive and recently single has nothing to do with why you always smile when his name comes up." Naomi felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not ready for anything like that yet. It's been 6 months, honey. You're allowed to be interested in good men." "I know. I need to be sure I can trust my own judgment again before I trust someone else." Cassandra nodded understandingly. "That makes sense. But don't let Brandon's lies make you suspicious of everyone. Some people actually are who they appear to be." That afternoon, Naomi had a consultation with a potential new client, a young woman named Zoe who was starting a fitness coaching business. As they talked about Zoe's vision and goals, Naomi was impressed by her authenticity and passion. "I want to help people build strength, not just physical but mental," Zoe explained. "I went through a difficult divorce last year and fitness was what saved me. It gave me back control over my own life." Naomi understood that completely. "What kind of message do you want your brand to convey?" "Empowerment. Self-reliance. The idea that you don't need anyone else to make you whole, you just need to discover the strength you already have." As they worked through brand concepts, Naomi realized she was designing the kind of messaging she wished she'd had during her darkest moments with Brandon. The tagline they developed, "Find Your Power," felt like something she would have tattooed on her arm. That evening she was putting finishing touches on Zoe's preliminary brand package when her phone rang. "Thomas. Hey, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What's up?" "I wanted to run something by you. My company is hosting a charity gala next month, and I'm on the planning committee. We're looking for someone to handle the marketing materials and event branding." "Interested. That sounds like a great project. Send me the details and I'll put together a proposal. Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to discuss it over dinner. Business dinner. Professional consultation." Naomi paused, recognizing the carefully casual tone. "Thomas? I know you said you're not ready for anything romantic. I respect that completely. But I enjoy talking with you and I think you're brilliant at what you do. This really would be a business dinner." "Okay," Naomi heard herself say. "Business dinner sounds good." They arranged to meet at a restaurant downtown, nothing too fancy or intimate, just a place where they could talk comfortably about the project. As Naomi got ready the next evening, she caught herself taking extra care with her appearance. Not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she was starting to feel like herself again, confident, attractive, worthy of good things. The dinner was exactly what Thomas had promised, professional, focused on the gala project, with easy conversation about their respective businesses. But there was something else there too, an underlying current of mutual respect and attraction that neither of them pushed but both acknowledged. "Can I say something personal?" Thomas asked as they waited for dessert. "Sure. I know we both went through something traumatic with Brandon and Rebecca, but I think it made us both stronger, more aware of what we actually want in our lives." Naomi nodded. "I know I'm not the same person I was a year ago. Better? Definitely better. More honest with myself about what I'll accept and what I won't. That's a gift in a way. Painful to get, but valuable to have." As they parted ways that evening, Thomas gave her a brief hug, friendly but warm, professional but with the hint of something more. "Thank you for dinner," Naomi said. "And for the project opportunity." "Thank you for being exactly who you appear to be," Thomas replied. "It's refreshing." Driving home, Naomi reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been questioning everything about herself, wondering what was wrong with her, why her husband didn't want her anymore. Now she was running her own successful business, surrounded by clients who valued her expertise, and having dinner with a kind, honest man who appreciated her exactly as she was. The revenge had been satisfying, but this feeling of building something real and lasting was so much better. As she pulled into her parking space, Naomi's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Looking forward to working together on the gala. You're going to create something amazing. She smiled as she typed back, we're going to create something amazing. For the first time in months, the word "we" didn't scare her. With the right person, partnership could be about building each other up rather than tearing each other down. Naomi was ready to find out what that might look like. The charity gala was a massive success. Naomi's elegant branding and marketing materials helped the event raise 40% more than the previous year, and her work caught the attention of several high-profile potential clients. More importantly, working closely with Thomas on the project had shown her a completely different model of partnership. He was collaborative without being controlling, supportive without being condescending, and honest about challenges without being dramatic or manipulative. The final numbers are incredible, Thomas said, settling into the chair across from Naomi's desk. They were having their post-project debrief, though they both knew the professional part of their relationship was evolving into something more personal. Your committee did an amazing job with execution, Naomi replied. Good marketing only works if the event itself delivers on the promises. Speaking of delivering on promises, I have something for you. Thomas pulled out a small wrapped box. Naomi's stomach tightened. Jewelry from a man felt loaded with meaning she wasn't sure she was ready for. Thomas, I can't. It's not what you think, he said quickly. Open it. Inside was a beautiful silver business card holder engraved with Sterling Consultancy, Naomi Sterling, Principal. I figured you needed something elegant for all those new clients you're going to get after tonight, Thomas explained. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. It was thoughtful without being presumptuous, supportive without being overwhelming. This is beautiful. Thank you. There's something else. Thomas handed her an envelope. Inside was a formal letter of recommendation for Sterling Consultancy, signed by the CEO of his company and 2 other major firms that had attended the gala. Thomas, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me take you to dinner? A real dinner this time, not a business meeting. Naomi really looked at him. Thomas was attractive in an understated way, with kind eyes and genuine smile lines. More than that, he'd proven himself to be reliable, supportive, and honest even when honesty was difficult. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking if you're ready to be asked on a date. The distinction was important. He wasn't pressuring her or assuming anything. He was giving her the space to make her own choice. I think I might be. Their first real date was everything Naomi had forgotten dating could be. Thomas picked a restaurant she'd mentioned liking, arrived exactly on time, and spent the evening asking thoughtful questions about her dreams and goals rather than just trying to impress her with stories about himself. What's the biggest project you want to tackle? He asked over dessert. I'd love to work with more nonprofits, especially organizations that help women rebuild their lives after trauma. There's something powerful about helping people rebrand themselves, rediscover their own stories. That makes perfect sense, given your experience. Thomas was the first person who talked about her divorce as something that had shaped her positively rather than something she'd survived or overcome. He saw it as part of her story without defining her entire identity. What about you? What's your dream project? I want to design sustainable housing for low-income families. Beautiful, efficient, affordable homes that give people dignity and stability. As he talked about his vision, Naomi was struck by his passion for creating things that mattered, for using his skills to make other people's lives better. It was so different from Brandon's focus on climbing corporate ladders and impressing the right people. Can I ask you something? Thomas said as they walked to their cars. Sure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met before all the drama with Brandon and Rebecca? Naomi considered the question. Honestly, I don't think I was ready for someone like you back then. What do you mean? I was so focused on being the perfect wife, the perfect girlfriend, making everyone else happy. I don't think I knew who I really was or what I actually wanted. And now you do? Now I do. Thomas stepped closer and Naomi felt her heart rate increase. But it wasn't anxiety, it was anticipation. Would it be okay if I kissed you? The fact that he asked permission, that he checked in with her instead of just assuming, made her answer easy. Yes. The kiss was gentle, respectful, but with an underlying warmth that promised more if she wanted it. When they separated, Naomi felt steady and excited rather than confused or overwhelmed. I'd like to see you again, Thomas said. I'd like that too. Over the next few months, their relationship developed with a naturalness that Naomi had never experienced before. Thomas was interested in her work, her opinions, her goals. He supported her ambitions without trying to manage them. When disagreements came up, they talked through them like adults instead of playing games or keeping score. Most importantly, he was exactly who he appeared to be. There were no hidden phone calls, no mysterious expenses, no sudden changes in behavior that didn't make sense. Thomas was reliable, honest, and present in a way that made Naomi realize how much energy she'd wasted trying to decode Brandon's mixed signals. "You seem different," Cassandra observed over lunch. "Happier. More settled. I feel different. More like myself than I have in years. Thomas seems like a good influence." It's not just Thomas, though he's wonderful. It's everything: the business, my independence, knowing I can trust my own judgment again. "Do you ever think about Brandon?" Naomi considered the question. "Sometimes. But not with anger anymore. More like relief that I found out who he really was before we had kids or bought a house together." "Any regrets about how you handled the exposure?" "None. He made choices that hurt innocent people. Someone needed to hold him accountable, and it clearly wasn't going to be him." That evening, Thomas came over to cook dinner at Naomi's apartment. As they worked together in the kitchen, Naomi marveled at how comfortable and natural everything felt. "I have news," Thomas said as he stirred the sauce. "I got approval for the sustainable housing project." "Thomas, that's amazing. Tell me everything." As he described his plans and timeline, Naomi found herself thinking about the future in ways she hadn't allowed herself to do with Brandon. With Brandon, she'd been so focused on maintaining what they had that she'd never really considered what they might build together. With Thomas, the possibilities felt endless because they were both growing individually while supporting each other's dreams. "What about you?" Thomas asked. "Any big news on the Sterling consultancy front?" "Actually, yes. I got a call today from a national women's organization. They want me to handle the rebranding for their entire network of shelters and support services." "Naomi, that's incredible. That could be huge for your business." "It could also mean traveling more, longer hours, less predictable schedule." Thomas put down the spoon and turned to face her. "Are you worried I'll have a problem with your success?" "Maybe. Past experience suggests some men do." "I'm not some men. I'm not Brandon. Your success makes me proud, not insecure." The simple honesty of his response made Naomi realize how much she'd been holding back, still protecting herself from betrayals that belonged to her past, not her present. "I know you're not Brandon," she said. "I'm still learning to trust that. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As they sat down to dinner, Naomi felt a deep sense of gratitude not just for Thomas, but for the journey that had brought her to this point. The pain of Brandon's betrayal had been real and devastating, but it had also forced her to discover her own strength, her own worth, her own capacity for building the kind of life she actually wanted. Looking across the table at Thomas' kind, honest, supportive Thomas, Naomi realized that sometimes the best revenge wasn't destruction. Sometimes it was simply living so well that your betrayer became irrelevant to your happiness. And that's exactly what she was doing. 18 months after their divorce was finalized, Brandon made his move. Naomi was in her office reviewing contracts for 3 new major clients, when her assistant buzzed in. "There's someone here to see you. Says his name is Brandon Mitchell?" Naomi's stomach clenched. "Tell him I'm not available. He says it's urgent. About legal matters related to your divorce." Naomi sighed. She'd been expecting this eventually. "Send him in, but leave the door open and stay close by." Brandon walked into her office looking like a shadow of his former self. His expensive suits had been replaced by off-the-rack clothing. His usual perfect grooming looked tired and strained. Most notably, the cocky confidence that had once attracted her was completely gone. "Hello, Naomi." "Brandon. What do you want?" "You look amazing," he said, taking in her professional attire and the obvious success of her surroundings. "This place is incredible. I always knew you had it in you to do something like this." "What do you want?" she repeated coldly. Brandon sat down without being invited. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life." "Yes, you did. Multiple mistakes, actually. I want to make it right." Naomi almost laughed. "Make it right?" "Brandon, you cheated on me, lied to me for months, exposed me to disease without my knowledge, and let me blame myself for your sudden coldness. How exactly do you plan to make that right?" "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But I've changed, Naomi. Losing you, losing my job, losing everything, it woke me up to what really matters." "And what really matters?" "You. The life we were building together." "We weren't building a life together. You were building a lie while I was building a life." Brandon leaned forward desperately. I've been in therapy for over a year. I understand now why I made those choices, why I was so scared of intimacy and commitment. I can be the husband you deserved. I don't want the husband I deserved. I want the life I've built without you. But look at what we had. What we had was based on deception. Not all of it. The good parts were real. Naomi studied him for a moment. Brandon, tell me something. When you were sleeping with Rebecca, did you think about me at all? What do you mean? I mean, when you were at those hotels, when you were lying about business trips, when you were using our credit cards to pay for your affair, did you think about how it would affect me if I found out? Brandon was quiet for a long moment. I tried not to think about you. Exactly. You tried not to think about me because thinking about me would have made it harder to betray me. You chose your temporary pleasure over my well-being, and you did it consciously. I was confused, scared of being married. You were selfish. And selfish people don't change just because they face consequences. They just get better at hiding their selfishness. That's not true. I really have changed. Prove it. How? Tell me about Rebecca. What happened to her after the company picnic? Brandon shifted uncomfortably. She moved back to her parents' house. Lost her job, obviously. Do you feel bad for her? Yes, of course. Do you feel responsible for what happened to her? Another pause. The situation got out of hand. That's not what I asked. Do you feel responsible for the consequences she faced? She made her own choices. So did you. But you're here asking me to take you back while she's dealing with the aftermath alone. Doesn't sound like you've changed much. Brandon's facade began to crack. What was I supposed to do? She was engaged to someone else. She made her own decisions. And you're making yours. You're here trying to get your comfortable life back instead of taking responsibility for the damage you caused. I am taking responsibility. That's why I'm here. No, you're here because your life didn't turn out the way you expected after the divorce. This isn't about making things right, it's about making things easier for yourself. Brandon stood up, his desperation finally showing. Fine, maybe I am here because I'm struggling. Maybe losing everything made me realize what I had with you. Is that so wrong? It's not wrong, it's just not enough. What would be enough? Naomi really looked at him and saw clearly what she'd been too in love to see during their marriage. Brandon wasn't evil, but he was fundamentally self-centered. Everything he did, including this conversation, was filtered through the lens of what was best for him. Nothing would be enough, Brandon. Because I don't want you back. But we were happy. I was happy because I didn't know who you really were. Now I do. People can change. Some people can. But you haven't. You're here trying to convince me that your betrayal was somehow understandable, that the consequences were too harsh, that I should give you another chance because you're sorry. That's not change, that's the same self-serving thinking that led to the affair in the first place. Brandon's face flushed with anger. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 4 years of history? You threw it away when you decided Rebecca was worth more than our marriage. One mistake. It wasn't one mistake, Brandon. It was hundreds of small choices, day after day, to prioritize your wants over our marriage. The affair was just the most obvious symptom of who you really are. And who am I? Someone who takes what he wants and deals with consequences later. Someone who's more concerned with being forgiven than with being trustworthy. Someone who thinks good intentions matter more than actual behavior. Brandon stood up abruptly. Fine. I can see you've made up your mind. But don't come crying to me when your rebound relationship with Thomas doesn't work out. The mention of Thomas confirmed what Naomi had suspected. Brandon had been keeping tabs on her life, probably hoping to time his return when she was vulnerable. Thomas isn't a rebound, Brandon. He's what a healthy relationship looks like. Right. Just like you thought we were healthy until you found out the truth. The difference is that Thomas has never given me reason to doubt him. He's honest about his feelings, his past, his intentions. He doesn't make me guess what's real and what's performance. He'll disappoint you eventually. Everyone does. Maybe. But if he does, he'll be honest about it instead of lying to protect himself while letting me suffer. Brandon headed for the door, then turned back one more time. You used to be forgiving, Naomi. You used to believe in second chances. I used to be naive. I used to think forgiveness was more important than self-respect. I was wrong. After he left, Naomi sat in her office for a long time, processing the encounter. She'd expected to feel something: anger, sadness, maybe even a flicker of the old attraction. Instead, she felt nothing but relief that she'd trusted her instincts and moved on. That evening, she told Thomas about Brandon's visit. How do you feel? Thomas asked, pulling her closer on the couch. Grateful. Grateful? That I know the difference between manipulation and genuine remorse. That I know what it feels like to be with someone who's actually trustworthy. That I built a life I'm not willing to give up for someone who doesn't deserve it. Thomas kissed the top of her head. I'm proud of you. For what? For knowing your worth. For not settling for less than you deserve. As they sat together watching the city lights through her apartment windows, Naomi reflected on how much she'd changed. 18 months ago, Brandon's desperate plea might have worked. She might have convinced herself that love meant giving infinite second chances, that forgiveness required putting herself at risk again. Now she knew better. Love meant choosing people who chose you back consistently and honestly. Forgiveness meant releasing resentment, not returning to harmful situations. And self-respect meant believing that she deserved better than someone who had to lose everything before he realized she had value. Brandon's return had been his last desperate gamble. But Naomi was no longer the woman who could be won back with apologies and promises. She was someone much better than that. 2 years after Brandon's pathetic attempt at reconciliation, Naomi stood in the bathroom of her new home, adjusting her dress for what might be the most important evening of her life. The woman looking back at her in the mirror was confident, successful, and genuinely happy, everything she'd never quite managed to be during her marriage. Sterling Consultancy had grown beyond her wildest expectations. The National Women's Organization project had led to 3 more major contracts, and she'd recently hired 2 full-time employees and 3 contractors. Her work helping trauma survivors rebrand their lives had gained national attention, leading to speaking engagements and feature articles in business magazines. More importantly, her relationship with Thomas had deepened into something she'd never experienced before, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine compatibility. They'd moved in together 6 months ago, not because they were trying to recreate some idealized version of marriage, but because they genuinely enjoyed building a life together. Almost ready? Thomas called from the bedroom. 2 minutes. Tonight was the grand opening of Thomas's sustainable housing project, 12 beautiful, affordable homes for families transitioning out of homelessness. Naomi had designed the marketing materials pro bono, but more than that, she was proud to support work that aligned with both their values. As they drove to the event, Thomas reached over and took her hand. I have something to tell you. Good something or concerning something? Good something. I got a call today from Brandon. Naomi felt her stomach tighten reflexively, though the reaction was much milder than it would have been even a year ago. What did he want? To congratulate me. Apparently he saw the article about the housing project in the Business Journal. That's unexpected. He also said he wanted me to know that he's engaged. Naomi processed this information with surprise at her own lack of emotional response. How do you feel about that? I feel sorry for his fiancée, Thomas said without hesitation. And grateful that he's someone else's problem now. Do you think he's changed? Do you care? Naomi considered the question seriously. Not really. I hope he has, for his fiancée's sake. But it doesn't affect my life either way. That's how I knew you were really over him. What do you mean? When someone you used to love becomes truly irrelevant to your happiness, that's when you know you've healed completely. At the housing project opening, Naomi watched Thomas give his speech about community, dignity, and the importance of giving people stable foundations from which to rebuild their lives. The parallels to her own experience weren't lost on her. She needed to build her own stable foundation before she could trust anyone else to be part of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas continued, I want to thank everyone who made this project possible, but especially someone who's taught me that the most beautiful transformations happen when people are given the support and space to become who they're meant to be. He looked directly at Naomi as he spoke, and she felt her cheeks warm with a combination of love and pride. After the speeches and tours, as the crowd began to thin out, Thomas pulled Naomi aside to one of the model homes. There's something else I wanted to show you, he said, leading her to the kitchen. On the counter was a manila folder not unlike the one where Naomi had first discovered Brandon's betrayal, but this one represented something entirely different. What is it? Plans for the second phase of the project. 20 more units, but these would be for women leaving abusive relationships. I was hoping Sterling Consultancy might be interested in handling all the branding and marketing. Naomi opened the folder, her heart swelling as she read through the detailed plans for what would essentially be a fresh start community for women rebuilding their lives. Thomas, this is incredible. Of course I want to be involved. There's one more thing. Thomas pulled out a small box and Naomi's breath caught. But instead of panic or uncertainty, she felt a deep sense of rightness. I know we've both been through hell with other people, Thomas said, getting down on one knee. I know we've both learned to be careful with our hearts and our trust. But I also know that what we have is different. It's honest. It's equal. It's everything a partnership should be. Naomi felt tears starting to form. I don't want to recreate some fantasy version of marriage. I want to build something new with you, something based on who we really are and what we actually value. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful but not ostentatious, a simple, elegant design that perfectly reflected both her taste and their shared values. More importantly, the proposal felt like Thomas, through and through, thoughtful, genuine, focused on their future rather than grand romantic gestures. Yes, she said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. As Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Naomi marveled at how different this felt from her engagement to Brandon. With Brandon, she'd been excited about the idea of being married, about fitting into a role she thought she wanted. With Thomas, she was excited about the specific life they would build together, about the work they would do, the values they would share, the way they would support each other's growth. I love you, Thomas said against her ear. I love your strength, your integrity, your ability to turn trauma into purpose. I love you too. I love your kindness, your vision, your commitment to making the world better. As they stood together in the kitchen of the model home, surrounded by the evidence of Thomas's commitment to helping people rebuild their lives, Naomi realized that her story with Brandon hadn't been a tragedy after all. It had been the necessary prelude to this, to finding someone who deserved her trust, to building a business that reflected her values, to understanding the difference between settling for less and choosing something real. 6 months later, at their wedding in the community garden that served the sustainable housing project, Naomi looked out at the assembled guest clients who'd become friends, colleagues who'd become family, and most importantly, women she'd helped rebrand their lives who'd come to celebrate this new chapter of hers. Brandon wasn't there, of course. Neither was Rebecca. They'd both moved on to new lives, new relationships, new patterns that may or may not have included the growth they'd claimed to have achieved. Naomi genuinely hoped they'd found happiness, but more importantly, she no longer needed to know one way or the other. As she and Thomas exchanged vows, they'd written themselves promises based on their actual values rather than traditional scripts. Naomi thought about the journey that had brought her here. The discovery of Brandon's betrayal had felt like the end of her world, but it had actually been the beginning of her real life. Sometimes the best revenge wasn't destruction or suffering inflicted on those who'd wronged you. Sometimes the best revenge was living so authentically, so successfully, so joyfully that your betrayer's opinion became irrelevant to your happiness. Looking into Thomas's eyes as they promised to support each other's dreams, to maintain their individual identities while building something together, to choose honesty even when it was difficult, Naomi knew she'd achieved something far better than revenge. She'd achieved victory not over Brandon, but over the version of herself who'd been willing to accept less than she deserved. As the officiant pronounced them married and Thomas kissed her with genuine love and commitment, Naomi realized that her story wasn't really about Brandon's betrayal at all. It was about her own transformation, her own strength, her own capacity for building the kind of life that no one could take away from her. The cheating husband who'd once made her question her worth had become nothing more than a footnote in the story of her success. And that was exactly where he belonged.